Did you know that one of the most iconic voices in soul music, Marvin Gaye, met his end not just in tragedy but surrounded by a darkness so haunting that even those closest to him were stunned? Known for timeless classics like What's Going On and Sexual Healing, Marvin Gaye was more than a singer. He was the heartbeat of a generation. He helped shape the sound of Motown, became a symbol of emotional vulnerability in black music, and gave voice to both sensuality and sorrow. But the man behind the velvet voice died broke, emotionally shattered, and in the very home he had hoped would offer peace. In 1984, just one day before what would have been his 45th birthday, Marvin Gaye was shot and killed by his own father in their family home. His story is not just one of extraordinary talent, it's one of trauma, estrangement, and a chilling secret he may have taken with him to the grave. In this video, we're revisiting the final chapter of Marvin Gaye's life, exploring the events inside that modest Los Angeles home where the music stopped forever. From his eerie final words to the shocking state of his finances at the time of his death, we'll uncover how a once unstoppable legend met a heartbreaking, chaotic end. Let's step into the world of Marvin Gaye, the side the music never told you. The House of Turmoil on April 1st, 1984. A seemingly minor family argument over a misplaced insurance document spiraled into deadly violence. But to fully grasp what happened that day, we must go back, decades earlier, to understand the toxic foundation laid between Marvin Gaye and his father. Marvin Gaye Sr., Marvin would later add the to his last name for professional reasons. Marvin Gaye Sr. was a Pentecostal minister with ties to the House of God, a denomination known for its strict, often unforgiving, religious doctrine. At home, he ruled with an iron fist. He demanded obedience, enforced rigid discipline, and harbored a litany of personal contradictions. He struggled with alcoholism, exhibited erratic behavior, and secretly wore women's clothing, a fact Marvin Jr. found deeply confusing as a child. But worst of all, Gaye Sr. was violently abusive, especially toward Marvin. According to Marvin's sister Jean, the abuse began when Marvin was just 7 years old and continued relentlessly into his teens. Marvin once likened life under his father to living with a cruel king. Powerful, unpredictable, and merciless. His mother, Alberta, later revealed that her husband never wanted Marvin, resented him from birth, and was openly jealous of the affection she gave their son. And yet, paradoxically, it was Marvin Sr. who first introduced Marvin to music. He taught him to play piano by ear at age 5 and encouraged him to sing in the church choir. For a short while, music served as a fragile bridge between father and son, but that connection would not survive the anger and resentment that defined their relationship. Fame, addiction, and paranoia. By the early 1980s, Marvin Gaye was attempting a much-needed comeback. After years of personal and professional instability, including substance abuse, failed marriages, and disputes with Motown, he found renewed success with his album Midnight Love. Released in 1982, the album included the smash hit Sexual Healing, which spent 10 weeks at #1 on the Billboard Hot Black Singles chart. The track was more than a commercial success, it was a cultural moment, marking Marvin's triumphant return to the spotlight. To support the album, Gaye launched a 4-month tour beginning in April 1983. At first, things went smoothly. He was mostly sober, energized, and performing well. But as the tour progressed, so did his drug use. Cocaine, in particular, took hold of him. He grew increasingly paranoid, believing people were trying to poison him and that his life was in danger. At one point, he even wore a bulletproof vest backstage and claimed to have hired famed lawyer F. Lee Bailey to investigate death threats. Gaye's descent into paranoia was accompanied by emotional instability. By the end of the tour, he was physically and mentally wrecked. He retreated to his parents' home at 2101 South Gramercy Place in Los Angeles, a modest house he had bought for them years earlier. Inside that home, 3 adjoining bedrooms on the 2nd floor separated Marvin Jr., his father, and his mother. Despite being under the same roof, Marvin and his father barely spoke. Alberta and Marvin Sr. hadn't shared a bed in over a decade. Out back in a detached guest house lived Marvin's younger brother, Frankie, and his wife, Irene. Somewhat insulated from the growing storm inside, Marvin Jr. spent most of his time alone in his room, drowning in isolation and addiction. His mother recalled him repeatedly promising, "Mother, this is the last time, I swear." But the cycle always continued. His paranoia grew worse. He installed a high-tech security system, fearing danger at every corner. Visitors included old girlfriends, groupies, and even his ex-wives. It was clear Marvin was unraveling. The day the music died on March 31st, 1984, tensions reached a boiling point. Marvin Sr. and Alberta argued throughout the day over the missing insurance paper. He blamed her for misplacing it and yelled furiously around the house. Marvin, deeply protective of his mother, eventually intervened, pleading with his father to stop. Though the confrontation escalated by nightfall, the tension simmered into the next day. At around 12:30 p.m. on April 1st, Marvin Sr. shouted up the stairs to his wife, who was sitting in Marvin Jr.'s bedroom. "Marvin, Marvin, overhearing the outburst, leaned over the railing and snapped back. If his father wanted to speak to his mother, he should come upstairs and say it to her face, like a man. That challenge was the final spark. According to Alberta, Marvin Sr. stormed upstairs and burst into their son's room, still raging about the insurance paper. Marvin, already on edge, demanded that his father leave immediately. When he didn't, Marvin shoved him out of the room, knocking him down. In a flurry of anger, Marvin reportedly kicked and punched his father while he lay in the hallway. Alberta intervened, separating them, and Marvin Sr. silently walked away to his room. Moments later, he returned, holding a .38 caliber pistol. It was the same gun Marvin Jr. had ironically gifted him months earlier for protection. Without a word, he raised the weapon and fired. The first bullet hit Marvin in the chest, tearing through his heart and several organs. As Marvin collapsed against his bed, his father stepped forward and fired again, this time striking below his left collarbone. Frankie rushed in from the guest house. Irene called 911. Marvin lay bleeding, barely conscious. In a whisper, he told Frankie, "I got what I wanted. I couldn't do it myself, so I had him do it. It's good. I ran my race." By the time paramedics arrived and transported him to California Hospital Medical Center, it was too late. Marvin Gaye was pronounced dead at 1:01 p.m., the day before his 45th birthday. Aftermath in the trial, Marvin Gaye Sr. was arrested and taken to Los Angeles County Jail on $100,000 bail. During his initial interviews, he showed little remorse. Speaking with the Herald Examiner, he recalled, "I pulled the trigger. I was trying to keep him back off me." In November 1984, he appeared in court. Judge Gordon Ringer acknowledged the tragedy, but echoed the investigators' view that Marvin Jr. had provoked the incident. He sentenced Marvin Sr. to a 6-year suspended sentence and 5 years probation. When asked whether he loved his son, the elder Gaye replied simply, "Let's just say I didn't dislike him." Marvin's final secret. Marvin Gaye left behind a legacy of music, but he also carried deep personal secrets. Raised in extreme poverty in Washington, D.C., Marvin grew up in the Fairfax Apartments, a housing project so rundown it lacked running water. Despite this, young Marvin discovered music early, singing in church while his father played piano. At 11, he wowed a school audience with his rendition of Be My Love, realizing in that moment that music could be his salvation. But fame couldn't erase his demons. By the time of his death, Marvin was virtually broke, owing millions in taxes and struggling financially despite his chart-topping success. The man who had once sold out stadiums died with a net worth that shocked his fans. He had just $9 million in debts and almost no assets. His final words revealed the depth of his despair. He didn't want to live, but he couldn't bring himself to end it. So, in a tragic twist, the man who gave the world love songs met his end not from violence on the streets or sabotage from enemies, but from a father's bullet fired in a moment of rage. Marvin Gaye's story is a reminder that fame, success, and talent don't shield anyone from pain, trauma, or tragedy. Behind the soaring vocals and soulful melodies was a man fighting demons no one could fully understand. And in the end, those demons weren't just emotional, they were living under the same roof. This is the part of Marvin Gaye's legacy that the music doesn't sing about, but maybe, just maybe, it's the part that most deserves to be heard.